All right. I guess we start without much ado. Apologies for trying to grab a cup of coffee, but I guess that was not to be. But we had a very exciting talk by on the what's post GLP-1, which I think is very exciting to see what can we do. And with that, segueing into this session of a fireside chat, we have an eminent fireside chat participant here, Mr. Ganesh Nayak. He's been part of, he's an executive director in Zydus Life, and he's been part of the organization and seen it evolve from a very small, medium-sized company to a 2 billion plus company that it is today. 3 billion, including Zydus Wellness and others. So that's, being a pharma guy, I tend to kind of isolate pharma. But yes, it's a 3 billion company. And they've gone through various acquisitions, both organic and inorganic. And the latest is that they've acquired a medical devices company called Amplitude. And that segues yet another aspect of their wanting to grow. And I think the center of all that, as integral part of that growth strategy, has been Mr. Ganesh Nayak. So one of the reasons for this fire chat, when Amit and I spoke, was to have someone who's kind of fashioned this journey, not just in India, but also outside of it, and look at various aspects of both organic and inorganic. And that's the reason and background for this fireside chat with Mr. Ganesh Nayak. So, sir, welcome. And
Thank you.
without much ado, we are, globally a 500 billion opportunity in Nutra, and that's the reason why there are so many eager minds here. So, just want to kind of pick on your experience and on the journey that you have been. You've been part of fashioning this entire growth in the Zydus Wellness Group. So, take us through some of the defining moments and experiences around that. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Suresh. First of all, I must compliment the organizers because I think after a very, very, very long time, I'm seeing some program which has not only started on time, but we are almost 35, 40 minutes ahead of schedule. Normally, it's all the other way around. So I must compliment you. In fact, last evening I had my doubts and I was assured that we will definitely start on time. So I'm extremely glad that there is a discipline this team follows. Coming to this point about my journey, I have worked in this organization for 48 years. And I think the mandate of this is to understand nutraceuticals, not my lifestyle and my story. But since you mentioned it, I mean, there have been so many events in the life of this organization over the last 48 years. But the most important and decisive one for me was in 1995 when the two families decided to split this company between themselves. And then from the then Cadila Laboratories, it was divided into Cadila Pharmaceuticals, which went to the other partner, and Cadila Healthcare, which went to the Patel family, part of which I am. And in 1995, we decided so that there was enough scope for differentiation and understanding between the two companies at the marketplace, we chose the name Zydus. And in 1995, we started with 220 crores. This year, we should be something close to 25,000 crores. So if you ask me, that was whatever word you want to use, defining or otherwise, that was the most important event in this career of mine of 48 years.
Thank you. That was helpful, Ganesh. You know, moving forward, when you really look at the growth, one of the acquisitions that you made that created Zydus Wellness, the acquisition of Heinz, was indeed a very different path for a pharma company to take. So, in your view, how does a nutraceutical company or how does a pharma look at a nutraceutical segment? And does it require that you create separate vehicles? That was one. Second is, sure, does it help in reimagining nutraceuticals? Because going the pharma way, the word is still out. Is it limiting or is it facilitating? And the last one that I would want you to talk about is there is this raging debate of B2B versus D2C. So, how would you build a nutraceutical company? Is my question to you.
It's not a question. There are 3, 4 questions in that
Yeah,
one
in case
question
you
of
said masters.
yours. Correct. And trust me, if I start answering that in ample detail, it will take me several hours. But let me try to address it. See, we were known until a few years ago as the healthcare, Cadila Healthcare Limited. Before that, we were known as Cadila Laboratories Limited. But about a decade ago, we realized that we are into healthcare, life sciences. That's why the first thing we did was we changed our name from Cadila Healthcare Limited to Zydus Life Sciences Limited. Coming to that first point which you made about this acquisition and healthcare or nutritional business, it was in 1988, calculate how many years ago, that we first chose to slightly deviate from our pure pharmaceutical business into the OTC business. And we launched our sugar free, which at that time was aspartame. It was not so much under a cloud. Of course, today, now, then we shifted to sucralose, and now we have stevia and monk fruit and all that. And that was the first taste of success for us. Just to give you some numbers, and also in terms of strategy, what we did is when we launched this product in 1988, that time there was Equal and Splenda, these were the leaders. We first started talking to the doctors because our focus was not as much on obesity as it was on management of diabetes, blood sugar. And those 2 years we promoted this product to the doctors and through the doctors. After 2 years, we went through the FMCG OTC route. And today, I mean, even I'm surprised because competition is so severe and having numbers like this is difficult to believe. But our market share for the last several years is 94%. It's not a big, it's a 400 crore market, but 94%. And so many companies have tried, and Equal and Splenda, which were leaders, today, in spite of their trying, they still haven't managed to make a breakthrough. So that is where we tasted success. Coming to this Kraft Heinz thing, then we went on, we launched Ever Youth, the skincare product, and we were doddering around 600 crores or so. We decided we needed scale if we were to be a serious healthcare player or a nutritional business player. And this opportunity came, I mean, we paid quite a bit of money. It's in the public domain. We paid something like 4,650 crores, but we got a good 800-900 crore addition to our 700 600 crore business. And we had three, in the nutritional business, unlike the pharmaceutical business, which maybe I'll talk about a little later, you need to have credibility. You need to have scale, you need to have credibility, and you need to have some image. We were known as an Indian company with sugar free, so with the Complan and Glucon D and Nycil, these three iconic brands which we got, it gave us a good fillip. It put us into the big league. And today, the turnover of that company we acquired, Kraft Heinz, was what? 4 years ago. This year, we should be crossing the 3,000 crore mark. And as you know, it's a listed subsidiary of Zydus Life Sciences Limited. So our journey has been well thought of, and it was triggered by this product which we launched then. So broadly, this is my answer to your first two questions. Now, you see, I'm more of a pharmaceutical guy. My experience with the nutraceuticals, other than being part of the launch of sugar free and then several other products like this, and that I'm on the board of Zydus Wellness too. Other than that, my mainstay is pharmaceuticals. But having dealt with that, I do have an insight into it. And we also sell in several parts because I also look after the global business. So I have some insight into it. But let me put a caveat. I'm not an expert on this. And today, with products like this glucagon, like peptide, one agonist, and all that, things have changed. So the primary difference between pharmaceutical marketing and nutraceuticals is, see, in pharmaceutical marketing, our customer is the patient, but that's not a customer. We go to the doctors. We can't go directly to the patients, at least not of now or as yet. Our customer is the doctor. Whereas in the OTC or FMCG or nutraceuticals business, you directly have to go to the patient. And that makes a lot of difference. Plus, in terms of regulation, because you would have seen in Tim's presentation, he spoke of FDA, etc. And in India also, there are bodies, regulatory bodies, which are quite strict in terms of their approach towards the management of businesses done in pharmaceuticals. It has always been there, but also now with the nutraceuticals. So for pharmaceuticals, we have this thing which is called as CDSCO, Central Drug Standards Control Organization. And for nutraceuticals, we have the FSSAI, Food Safety Standards Authority of India. So these are the two bodies, but the CDSO is far, far more stricter, because pharmaceuticals, you need clinical trial, you need data, you need GMP practices, etc. So it's not so easy to launch a pharmaceutical product as compared to the nutraceuticals. So there are several differences. And also in pharmaceuticals, there's a lot of investment in the development of a product. But in terms of marketing, it is not much as compared to nutraceuticals. Whereas in nutraceuticals, to launch a product, it is not as difficult as it is in the business of pharmaceuticals. But to develop a product's position, it takes a lot of investment. So there are quite a few differences.
Sure, thanks, Ganesh. Just want to bring you back to one question, which is probably a raging debate, uh, B2B versus D2C, and the impression that D2C companies will require a lot of cash burn, and therefore B2B is a safer place to start. So what would be your thoughts, especially given brands like Kapiva, are doing direct to consumer in a very innovative way. So what is your take on it?
Tim mentioned in the US, it's 30% online.
Yes.
Now in India, and being associated with Zydus Wellness, in the last, I think, 4 or 5 years, this online business has increased rapidly. Earlier, it was this modern trade, this chains which were there.
Yeah.
And before that, they were the general merchants. 20 years ago, general merchants were our mainstay. Then it became this modern trade started coming in and squeezing our margins. But now it's absolutely online. So direct to customers or consumers is gaining rapid ground. And I think, and see, it doesn't come easy. One of the board meetings, one of the board members raised this query, and then we did an analysis. The cost of digital marketing, it doesn't come cheap. It is quite expensive, but it is very, very effective once you have crossed the threshold.
Oh, got it. No, I think there have been some very useful lessons that you've talked about. How, as an organization, you got interested into the OTC market through this initial success of sugar free, and one more product, Ever Youth, and then you said you thought that playing at scale is very important, and therefore the acquisition, and then your views on D2C. They're all very, very much in line. Thank you. Very enlightening comments. Ganesh, now moving on, as a segue to the regulatory conversation that the comments that you made, pharma thrives on evidence and clinical trials. But when you actually take a parallel to nutraceuticals, it also thrives on credibility, customer loyalty, and therefore, where is the line, that you draw, and how do you build credibility in nutraceutical brands? How will you make the customer or any influencer believe in this? We had a talk that Tim gave, but how do you bring in that customer confidence? In a GLP-1, in a tirzepatide, in a Wegovy, there is evidence, right? And there is a recommender. How do you see brand building in nutraceuticals in the context, in the back of credibility?
See, I was just wondering when Tim made this presentation. See, GLP-1 is a different ballgame altogether. It is absolutely pure pharmaceuticals. And if you
I take it
and
back,
they are working
Ganesh.
on both tirzepatide as well as semaglutide, so now I know a little bit about it. That's not a drug you can just go to a doctor and say, I want it. There are certain parameters, metrics, health parameters, where only on the basis of that, that drug can be prescribed, because, you know, it delays the gastric emptying time, which I don't think is a good thing. If you allow the food to putrefy in your stomach, it stimulates a certain, neuro transmitters which reduce your hunger, etc. So it's an artificial thing on your body. And if you're absolutely obese, you have high levels of HbA1c, etc., then it's okay. But just because I want to look good from a cosmetic point of view, I don't think it is. That's one. Second is, we are talking about nutraceuticals. Nutraceuticals is what? Nutraceuticals is a word derived from nutrition and pharmaceuticals. It is what in English we call as a portmanteau. Correct? And that's a word definition description of the word. But what does it mean? Nutraceuticals are products derived from products or from part thereof, which have health benefits, medical benefits, which can or may prevent a disease or treat a disease, in addition to the intrinsic value that nutrient has. So comparing it, or even talking about it with reference to drugs like the GLP-1 agonists, etc., I think it's slightly not in the right spirit or context, because that's a medical pharmaceutical product. Obesity is definitely a big issue, but there are, see, several times he said, he spoke of spirulina. Eat spirulina, eat vegetables. Spirulina is an algae, right? And then you have, you mentioned walking, starving reduces it by 33%. So there are other ways. Now, if you are so indisciplined that you cannot take care of all these things, then you need some medical intervention like this GLP-1s. So broadly, I think.
So I think I'm going to redefine the question. Thank you. Those were, and I completely agree with you, Ganesh, that comparing it with GLP-1 is not a fair thing. Though obesity is such a common problem, and we do tend to do what is necessary. But going aside, right, for companies that are going outside, how do they represent credibility? In the sense that, how do you communicate the right things? What do you do as a basic threshold to kind of make sure that the consumer believes you?
Now, that's a difficult question to answer. It's a tall order for any marketeer, because credibility means what? How do you build credibility? There are several factors. One is, the first thing is, your product has to be good. And trust me, I told you the success story of our sugar-free, but I have 2 or 3 other stories which are not so good to mention. One is, we launched ActiLife. We did a good market research. ActiLife was, because we realized that products like Complan and the other Protein X, etc., are taken by adults, which are actually for children. There was no milk supplement or protein containing product for an adult. So we chose the high degree of high level of proteins. We put in some probiotics, we put in some fat reducers and all that. And our ad agency said this is the perfect product. And the name also is very good, ActiLife, for adults. But that product didn't do well. One of the reasons is, now I'm talking about the credibility. We made claims on the TV and press media. And it was a complicated product. The mistake we did was, unlike what we had done with the sugar-free, we should have gone to the doctors. Because what happens is, in India, 70% of the people in semi-urban as well as rural areas, they go to the chemist and they ask, I have a headache, I have a stomach ache, etc. and all that. And or they go to the doctors who are in urban areas, etc. They would go to a doctor and say, doctor, this product, are you aware of it? How is it? Should I take it, etc. The doctors, being a community which is quite conservative, they would not give you a go ahead for the product unless they are aware of it. That awareness can come only from promotion through the doctors. So coming to your question of credibility, first of all, the credibility has to be set with the key opinion leaders, people you would go to, which in this instance, they happen to be the medical profession or the doctors. Second is, the quality of the product has to be good, because you see, massive advertisements, and advertisements are very costly, can get an individual or a patient to go and buy the product once, but for a repeat purchase, the quality has to draw itself to the patient. It has to win. So in terms of credibility, first is the quality. Second is, from my experience, I've found that availability of the product is a big issue. Distribution. If you want to succeed in the OTC or in the field of selling nutraceuticals, you must make sure that you have a solid distribution system or plan in place. If you don't have that, any amount of good product, good advertisement, etc., will not help. And I think most of the people here would be aware that I go to a chemist and ask a chemist or a store and ask for this product which I have seen, and the moment he says no, for me to go and again, because please understand the difference between a pharmaceutical product and a nutraceutical is the basic thing which is a need. I go to a doctor for a pharmaceutical because I have a disease. I need treatment. He prescribes, I have to go and get it. Whereas here I see it will give me good sleep, it will, reduce my acidity, etc. I mean, it's not such a pressing disease-related demand that I have to go. So there has to be a very strong bearing on my mind for me to go and make that decision, not decision, making me go and buy that product. So this credibility is, it has many factors. The product has to be available, it has to be good, it has to have key opinion leaders or professional endorsements, you have to have testimonials, etc. So there are several things, they are all prescribed, they are all copybook.
No, I tend to agree, and I know there is more to it than what we're discussing now. And credibility is a very important part of customer stickiness and brand
Credibility
building.
comes over a period of time. And see, the basic difference, as I said earlier, between pharmaceutical marketing and nutraceutical or FMCG or OTC is you need to have a deep pocket. Pharmaceuticals are break-even or payback period, etc., are very short. Whereas if you apply the same yardstick of measurement to the launch of a nutraceutical or OTC product, you're barking up the wrong tree. You'll never succeed. You need 5 years.
I agree. We're used to the generic or the branded generic stuff here, and payback is very quick. Yeah, you're right. And I just want to kind of segue into another one and come back to this topic is, how do you then look at companies that have global ambitions, entry into regulated markets like US and Europe, and somewhere if you can tag credibility of manufacturing made in India and building consumer businesses there. And if you could also touch upon, horses for courses, we see that there's so much of traditional medicine, in each country. There are opportunities of a different kind, and there are standard opportunities that you can kind of get into. What are some of your thoughts on building a global footprint in the Nutra area?
I have a good amount of experience in the field of pharmaceuticals going global, right? Because almost out of the 3 billion, almost 60% of our business comes from outside of our own country. In the field of nutraceuticals or FMCG or OTC, my experience is limited because
Fair enough.
over the last just 5-6 years, we have started making some progress or headway there. But there are certain basic principles, like we have been working with consultants, and this is what I've learned from a consultant 15-20 years ago. The 3 R's, the alphabet R. The first thing you have to do if you're going global is you have to make sure that your performance in the country is reliable. So for that, it takes time, 3, 4, 5 years, your product quality, your R&D, your regulatory compliance, etc., everything. So you have to make your first R, which is reliable. The second R is repeatability. You have to make sure that you keep on repeating the good performance that you have. And once you have your methods, your processes, your systems in place, then the third R is replicability. That you can go that same model, that template, you can apply it globally in the different countries. So your performance has to be reliable, repeatable, and then replicable. Now, replicable is easier said than done, because what I sell in Brazil, the same strategy will not work in South Africa or maybe in the Philippines.
True.
So I have to do a proper study there and then slightly tweak it. But basically reliable, repeatable, and replicable. So once you know what are the basic ingredients required, you can do that. The second is demographic understanding is very important. And going global means in different countries, you have to find an unmet need. If you just go with some run-of-the-mill products, the chances of your success will be very low.
No, thank you. That is the 3 R's is definitely a good set of things to be mindful of. Um, and I think as an extension, and our conversation is flowing very well. And just as a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, you might be wondering why Ganesh, who's not an FMCG expert, is here. But that's exactly the point, to give an out of the box view of how you look at it from another angle, and from his perch and lens, how do you kind of reimagine the standard approach, right? And is there a way, or is there a thing or two that many of you could take home? That was the whole purpose. So Ganesh, coming back, what are the attractive segments? We're all so overrun by this deluge of information coming on obesity, Tim and gang. I would, but I'm sure there are more segments, right? What are, in your estimation, outside of obesity, some of the attractive segments that uh, nutraceuticals could look at? And the second pointer or direction was in the how do a combination of Nutra and Ayurveda or traditional medicine kind of come as an opportunity, because the traditional wisdom, traditional medicine has already a kind of mind space in the consumer. How do you tap into that? Can you kind of, how do
You are an expert in putting two, three, four questions into one question. It would make my job much easier if you stuck to one question at a time. So the first one,
well, unmet need, Ayurveda,
you said, yeah, yeah.
phytochemistry
The
put together?
Ayurveda, the Prime Minister and the country, they've got this Ayush and all that, so which is a very big thing, and it's a very futuristic thing. But coming to your first point, which was which are the new areas other than this obesity, which
Right.
Tim, we are taking your name once too often. Correct? Yeah, because you chose such a controversial subject to present. See, obesity is there, but the other things which we are also looking at because of the advances being made in the business of pharmaceuticals and medicine, and also since nutraceuticals is closely allied or associated with it. See, we are talking about the middle age, no? We are talking about people like us, but there is a strong need for pediatrics, which is broadly addressed, but geriatrics is the big thing now. Since you mentioned it, I remembered some old data. Now it must be even worse. The aging population, as it is defined, people beyond the age of 65. Earlier it was 60. Japan has the highest rate. The last I knew, it was some 27%. 27% of the population is aging. Then you have Europe, etc., where they are 18, 19%. And I think US also is in that range. In India, at that time, this data I think I'm remembering from 4 or 5 years ago, was about 5 or 6%. But you see, with this population of 140, 45 million people and 1.4 billion, sorry, people, and obviously this number from 5 is going to become 7, 10, 15. And along with complications, comorbidities like diabetes and blood pressure compounded by obesity, this geriatric need is going to be huge. And for geriatrics, more than a medical intervention, the opportunity would lie in a nutraceutical intervention and opportunity. So if you ask me if I were to do something on that front, I would focus on that. And it's no more a niche. At this point in time, it may be a niche, but in the next 5, 10 years, it's going to be a big opportunity. Geriatrics.
And anything around the microbiome of women's health, those are emerging segments. And it is also said that as a country starts developing, one of the areas that really looks up is women's health. Uh, so any comments around?
Yeah, it has to do with awareness. Like I think somebody made a mention of the polycystic ovarian disease. That is gaining rapid attention in terms of the disease or disorder being diagnosed as well as being treated. And today, a lot of women's healthcare, medication, medicine, education is dependent on managing PCOD. Likewise, there is a question of hygiene. For women, hygiene is a big matter of importance, I would not say concern. And in a country like India, we need a lot of awareness which can come only through education. So women's health is definitely an important opportunity. And there are several products now, but of course, I think it has still a long way to go.
Sure. Thanks, Ganesh. And I want to come back to the combination of products using, uh, Ayurvedic and Nutra. And we see quite a few in the market. And how do you think companies should navigate that space? Because as you rightly alluded, there is an Ayush ministry and there is an FSSAI. And therefore, how do you plan these products? And there is an opportunity, like I said, traditional wisdom encourages those product categories, but is there a structured way we can think of as a way forward? Because there, I think, lies a huge opportunity in the middle.
See, I think you're venturing into the area of innovation.
So,
Innovation is required everywhere, all the more in nutraceuticals because I would not say it's in its infancy, but it is still to
waiting to
mature.
happen, yeah.
And there, innovation will definitely help. Like you saw in his presentation, again, I don't want to say Tim. He was talking about mixing
Didn't talk about you, Tim.
acarbose with the lipase inhibitor. He mentioned that product Eli. But before that, there was this product from Roche, Zenical, Orlistat, which also is a good product, but it has some side effects. That's why it didn't click. See, acarbose is a medical product. It needs a prescription. It's a AG1 inhibitor, as he said, and it is mainly for diabetes, postprandial and all that. So mixing these two products for obesity seems to be a good thought. And then he spoke of spirulina. But there also you see, because he said spirulina will release some GLP-1 like things in your gut, which will have the same effect there, but not through a chemically synthesized product like semaglutide or tirzepatide. So innovation is very important. These combinations are good, but that he was talking about the pharmaceutical area. Coming to your point, yes, why not? If we can combine an Ayurvedic product with this, and today people are talking about ashwagandha and curcumin and ginger and all these products, and they are found to be effective. So, but only thing, see, there has to be standardization.
Yes.
Standardization is the key word for nutraceuticals. If that credibility thing which you spoke of, other than the regulatory pathway which has to come through clinical trials, substantiation, there has to be some standardization. It has to be accepted by the regulator and then properly communicated to the customers.
Fair point. I mean, that was wonderful. Now, we're coming towards the end of last two questions, perhaps. So we're very much in time. We can actually give back time if possible. There are a lot of startups, right, in Nutra. If you're a mentor for, or let's say not mentor, but if you had equity in startups, what's the three things you would want your startup to be mindful of in the Nutra area? How soon would you, maybe you could touch upon scaling up, playing the bigger game, burning cash. What will be your advice?
Yeah, on the basis of what we discussed in the last 30 minutes or so, the first thing is that unmet need. If it is a startup, as I said, it can be a run-of-the-mill attempt or approach. You have to have an arrowhead, and that will come through some innovative products, which means you have to first find an unmet need. So that will make your field a field of least resistance, not maximum resistance. There are 10 other products, and then you have to compete with them. The second is, if you are going to be a mid-term or a long-term player, you have to be serious about the regulatory compliance. And trust me, the government of India today is looking at it very seriously in terms of seeing how they can, kind of bind the nutraceuticals and the OTC and the FMCG products which are being sold. They're also thinking whether it should come under CDSCO and all that. The moment that happens, regulatory compliance is well. So the second point is, first is unmet need. Second is you should have a strong regulatory compliance where you'll have clinical studies, you'll have clinical data, and you should be able to communicate this to the masses. The third thing is you're a startup. You might get funding and all that if your ideas are big and you build high dreams, but you must understand you have to have a very close eye on unit profitability of what you're selling. So you'll have to make sure that your marketing strategies, etc., are properly controlled, and you just don't go ballistic on spending, because when you meet these ad agencies, etc., they will tell you some very good inputs on how to generate sales. But once they have done it, they're gone. You're left with the potato. So these are the three things. You have to have unmet need, you have to have a very good regulatory compliance so that the credibility of a product is there. And third is you should have a good spend marketing, and that is another subject. As I said, distribution. First is distribution. And trust me, in these two products which we did not do well, one of the reasons other than that doctor thing which I told you was our distribution had failed. We did a research later on, because in pharmaceuticals you have to do this phase 4, which is called as post-marketing surveillance, whereas here it is not. So I would also, in that third point, make sure that we have a very good post-surveillance, post-marketing surveillance system in place, so that feedback is, it's all nine. Don't leave, excuse me, anything to chance.
I was also hoping that, thank you, Ganesh. I was also hoping to hear, will you spend ahead of the curve? Being a pharma person, used to short ROIs, would you invest ahead of the curve? Will you burn cash? Is that a good way of establishing business at scale?
See, one thing I've learned with reference to this particular thing, if I were or we were to start something afresh,
I'd love to.
startup, you said.
Thank you for asking. I'd love to.
So you see, a pharmaceutical guy will fail if he joins a OTC or a nutraceutical company, because the marketings are completely different. But if person with the nutraceutical and OTC experience, you employ him in a pharmaceutical company, you can have a lot of insights. So the first thing I would do is I would make sure that no pharmaceutical guy joins. Because I know, see, our mindset is different. First year I have to get returns because I go to the doctor, he prescribes, and one prescription, 10 chemists keep it, etc. It has a multiplier effect, whereas here it doesn't work that way. So marketing in the OTC or the nutraceutical field is a different ball game altogether.
You're still evading my question, but that's okay. On burning cash.
So burning cash, I told you, unit, you will have to have an eye on unit profitability. And burning cash means what? That's a very vague, sweeping statement you're making. Burning cash means how much?
You have an interpretation of what it is.
Yeah, if I go by my P&L of Zydus Lifesciences, and here my manpower cost, my advertising costs, my production costs, they're all different percentages. I cannot compare these two. And then, well, if you're asking this from a purely P&L point of view or a payback point of view,
yes,
for OTC, you have to have a 5-year plan.
That was good.
You can't have a 2-year, 3-year plan like we do in pharma marketing.
Lastly, Ganesh, and lastly, India is the pharmacy of the world, and a dominance in pharma would be there for a while. And what does it take? What is the one thing you would want to tell the Nutra world? What does it take for Nutra in India to achieve that status or walk towards that status?
Honestly, I don't think I'm qualified to answer that question, because I don't have the experience. Just by some knowledge which I have, answering that question I don't think would be fair, because if I make a statement, it has to have some substance, some value, and it has to be a proper statement, because I'm talking to people who would be already in the business or who would be thinking. So it is a big opportunity, no doubt. I mean, you saw it from the data. See, the global market, Tim said, is about 400, will be 500 billion and all that. India is hardly about 18-20. There are different numbers flying. But the India CAGR is around 11-12% now. And that it can, well, I don't like to use the word exponential, but it can definitely be, I would expect at that level in India, the growth should be 25% CAGR, at least for the next 3 to 4 years.
Sure.
So that is the opportunity. And for that, we have discussed over the last exactly 40 minutes are over now. We have discussed what are the opportunities, what are the unmet needs, etc., etc. So do all that. And you also use the word no horses for courses. So
Yes. Thank you. This has been wonderful use of the last 40 minutes. And thank you, Ganesh. And hope it was a time well spent. Thank you. You have all been a very patient audience. Thank you, Ganesh.
Thank you
very much. Thank you, organizers.